I'm Etienne, the founder and CEO of Iona. We are creating autonomous logistics networks, and more specifically, we're doing that with a drone at the moment, but we're doing also a bit of robotics, and potentially in the future it will be more than this. It all started from an observation. The light cargo segment, which is when you have like less than 20 parcels, it's extremely difficult to amortize the cost, and it's where the inefficiency is. And so starting from there, what are the solutions? In a counterintuitive way, in many places, which are the non-urban places especially, flying a parcel is more efficient than actually delivering it with a road vehicle, whether it be like an autonomous one or not. Just because you fly straight, you use like a very light aircraft instead of like a 2 tons structure vehicle that will deliver just a few parcels. And flying straight, therefore, you are also doing that with a very small battery. So we're using, for instance, 2 kilowatt in battery, and we can fly up to 20 parcels to 100 kilometers. So it gives a new paradigm for logistics operators, and you can imagine that especially as e-commerce grow, we need more and more granularity and ways of transporting things. So we're connecting with the network, we're connecting with the fleet, and you can use a delivery van when it makes sense, and you can use a drone when it makes sense as well.
Yeah, we see it all the time. So our operation's based in Cambridgeshire, a lot of rural villages. It's a big patch that we deliver to in our local area. And you very often just put something on a truck because there's a truck there, and that's what you've always done. But that's definitely not the smartest way of doing things.
No, it just like I think we're touching the aspect of multimodal here. What is the future of logistics? And the reason why we use trucks and delivery vans, it's mostly because it's kind of the only solution that we have at the moment. But when you consider a fleet, this is not exactly optimal. You want like different size, different optimization. You want like some parcels to go very fast to a direct location. You want some other parcels to be loaded with the specialty at Welsh Group, which is like the pallets and an Arctic, and in that case, it's going to go like from Cambridge to the north of Scotland, and you amortize cost this way. But it's really about multimodal and how logistics evolves for the future needs, because we're still doing logistics the way we were doing logistics 100 years ago, but the society has changed slightly. So
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I tell people that we're working with a drone company, the first thing that comes into their heads is, Amazon using a quadricopter to drop a cup of coffee in your yard. This isn't like that at all, is it? Can you tell us a bit more about the kit?
yeah, a drone is a word that is as vaguely defined as vehicles with wheels. So I hope that in the near future everyone will have that in mind, and will not fall into that trap. But when you talk about a drone, you need to be more precise. What we do is, I will avoid the jargon as much as possible, but we're doing a multicopter in the sense that it's you have propellers facing upwards and it takes off vertically. But we're doing it with a tilt rotor design, so the same propellers are transitioning to horizontal so that it becomes a plane. And we have therefore a large wing, which is 11 to 12 feet in wingspan. And there are different configurations depending on the use case that you have. And that way we are energy efficient. And being energy efficient is not only to be sustainable, it's actually to be competitive as well. Because when you have a drone and when you have an autonomous system in general, energy is the primary cost. So if you want to be more competitive, if you want to be more affordable also for the recipients and the customers, you need to be energy efficient. So we have that very specific technology, that structure as a tilt rotor, so like as a plane that takes off vertically, enables us to have a very large cargo volume, which was a limiting factor in many of the trials in drone delivery in the past few years. So we have 95 liters in volumetric capacity. So To give you an example, a bathtub would be about 130, so it's quite big. It can accommodate on average 20 plus parcels, and it's completely modular, so we can do multiple compartments that are delivered independently without the necessity for a human intervention. It lands, it opens the hatch, it drops the parcel that it has to drop, and it flies back. So that's quite convenient for a logistics operator. And we do that also fully integrated and embedded in the aviation rules. So we built the technology on a framework that was released in 2021, which is called the BVLOS, the Beyond Vision Line of Sight. And that framework enables us to have fully autonomous and repeatable drone operations. Once again, there is this usual Gartner hype cycle in startups and innovation, like, oh, there is a new tech, we're going to do everything with it, and then like, no, it doesn't work, it's shit, and then like, oh, actually there are some use cases for which like it's really convenient and everything. For drones, it was a bit that like in 2015, 16, some people got really excited and like, oh yeah, we're gonna deliver like coffee to your doorstep, and it's gonna go straight to your balcony, like serving you your wine while you are on a date or whatever. And then we said like, okay, well, if you're in the middle of London, you might not need that, except if you're like the medical service. Um, but there are some very strong use cases if you're in a non-urban environment, if you are dealing with emergency supply chains, if you're dealing with like, and so when you have that certainty, you know what to build. So the drone that will deliver your coffee to your doorstep, it exists actually, and they're doing quite well. It's called Mana, and they operate in Ireland. I know them quite well, um, and they're doing a great job. But they're like the Deliveroo of drone delivery. And then you have like others that will go for like Dronamics in Europe. It's a plane without pilot, so it's a bit like the DHL planes of, or like the UPS planes of drone delivery. And we are in a segment in between. We're doing like the 20 parcels, so we are like the delivery van in the sky. And when we're doing that for the logistics operators as well, so everything is integrated in the regulatory stack so that it's seamless to use. You are in logistics operators, you have at your disposal a certain type of vehicle, like you have a delivery van, you have a truck, you have a cargo bike maybe, and with that you will have a drone, and then it becomes multimodal and data driven. It's like you have a parcel that you need to deliver. What is the best way? And the system can tell you which one it should go with.
Let's dig into that then. The decision making process. I've spoken about this at length before. At the moment, our planners they have a couple of different versions of trucks to decide how to deliver goods, and it's mostly driven by range, payload, things like that. But in this multimodal future, where we're making better use of rail, better use of the waterways, there will be cargo bikes and drones. How can we make those decisions on how to deliver something, whether you're optimizing for cost or speed or CO2? Like it's too much for a human to handle, isn't it?
Yeah, the number of variables and well, we'll touch on AI because if we're doing a podcast in 2026, we have to talk about AI. And No, I think the real thing is we realize that on a number of things, humans are not really capable, and this is what we have done for like hundreds of years. We built machines that are better than us at a certain task because we have physical or cognitive limitations. I'm not going to arm wrestle a mechanic arm because I will probably lose. And it was built on purpose. So like that's the thing. In the same way, if you try to attack to tackle the travel salesman dilemma with mental calculation, you will struggle. And the famous travel salesman dilemma for maybe the people listening who are less logistics geek is you have a number of addresses, a number of delivery points. You're starting from a depot. What is the optimal route in between to either minimize CO2, minimize cost, a mix of those. Like, so you have an insane amount of variables when you consider this. And the route optimization companies are working on this. So, for instance, you have what type of vehicle do you use? If it's an attic or if it's like a delivery van or something like that, it's going to like have different criteria. It's going to consume more or less CO2. It's going to be more or less costly and everything. You have the traffic, which is already hard to predict in itself. You have the weather sometimes. You have unpredictable events, like being stuck at some point because there is like construction and everything. You have, even mathematically speaking, the salesman dilemma. You have 1,000 ways to optimize the route. So depending on what you're trying to achieve and everything. So it's very complex. What is interesting is that in a way, and I'm probably not going to say that to the person in charge of that in my team because he's going to scream, but I think that multimodal, when you're dealing with that, is easier because you're creating some kind of shortcut. You know that like if your main constraint is going with a delivery van point A, point B, point C, you're not going to even like wonder like, hey, maybe I could go to point C directly and then like point B and everything. You're not going to have like, you need to go to the three, and so you're going to follow like the route. If you have a road vehicle and a drone, you know that like the thresholds are bigger. So you know that like if you deliver to point C directly, you will 100% sure be faster and more energy efficient and more cost effective than if you were going with just the delivery van or like the truck. And so the thresholds are slightly bigger. It means that they are more obvious and you can play with it. But what we're trying to optimize at Iona, we have a fleet optimizer, and we did it not because we wanted to. We have plenty of work already, and we didn't want to increase the complexity. But we had to, because if drone delivery has to become like part of the day-to-day routine for a delivery provider, you can't just leave them with like, oh, I hope you have an aerospace engineer and a good team of R&D, because it's very complex to operate and it's insanely hard in terms of aviations. So in the same way that we encapsulate all that in a software stack, we also encapsulate the complexity of when should you use it. And we started to work on this, and Thomas in the team is in charge of this. And we realized that actually we were quite good, and we can actually make very significant savings in terms of either CO2 or cost by switching to the algorithm that we have, to the system that we have, not only when we're multimodal, but because multimodal uh, opened a bit like the Pandora box and showed us like inefficiencies and everything, we refined it in a way that even when you're dealing with a single vehicle, we have a quite strong route optimization algorithm. It's not our primary business, but I think it can be useful in the future, and we hope it's going to especially help the companies we work with to adopt drone delivery, because we want to have an immediate return on investment for them.
Yeah, it's a really smart way of looking at it. It's all very well and good building a technology that can help you make a delivery in some way, but if you're not enabling people to make the decision on when best to use that technology, then a trial can either look like it's not cost effective or it wouldn't get used to its sort of highest capacity. And then actually you've ended up with a product that could be really, really useful at like a fundamental level in any operation, whether they're using drones or not. Presumably it can make decisions between an 18 tonner or a van or an Arctic in the same way that it needs to make a decision between a drone and a truck. You know,
Yeah.
I'm convinced. Yeah. So what's stopping us from doing this today? Why don't we see these drone operations out in the world already?
You have a number of things. In the UK, it's not the most progressive framework. They decided to, so there is this European framework called SORA, SORA, and they wanted to be special, basically. So they created the UK SORA, which is 99% the same. But when you create something that 27 countries adopt around you and you're not doing exactly the same thing, it means that you're also creating more complexity for the people working at the Civilian Aviation Authority, because they have to do more work instead of just applying the framework. So it's in place, it works, but it's a bit slow.
What needs to change?
Staffing
Yeah,
would be a first.
it's just policy. Yeah, it needs to move faster and catch up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were meeting with Johnny, the chief operating officer. We were meeting at the parliament, an MP, the other day. It's going there. Um, they know it's a significant problem, and it's a significant problem like for everyone, because drones are quite a crucial industry in the future. So you kind of want not to miss out. You don't want to be dependent on foreign technologies for that and everything. And having that knowledge pool in the country is very important. So they know it's a problem, but the real situation is that it's slow. So the timeline that they adopted, like the way it works is, you don't want to no one got fired to buy IBM, was the sentence, like before the dot-com bubble. It's pretty much the same. You don't have you don't get any credits or like bonuses to take a risk or like to take an initiative. um, there is this threshold of like, okay, let's adopt drones as part of the day-to-day services and airspace, and you have some people who are a bit reluctant to do it as fast as they should, which means that it's there, but it takes a lot of time to get the approvals. Where in Ireland, like for instance, it can take 30 days to get what we call the TRA, which is like an airspace change, so that you can get things going. In the UK, theoretically, it's like 6 months. To my knowledge, it can take more than that. So I think it's a process. It's what makes aviation extremely safe as well. So like, we shouldn't rush it. But yes, we shouldn't rush the risk assessment. We shouldn't rush the R&D. I think we should rush a bit the paperwork sometimes. Like,
There's probably a risk that the UK could get left behind if Ireland and the EU are moving faster than this. Then, yeah, it's in our
yeah,
interest to get out of the
and
way a little
the US just adopted the framework.
bit. Okay,
Also,
so
the reality is, the US, they adopted the same type of framework, which is a risk assessment based. So when Europe and the US, which are the main producers of any aerospace like components and everything at the moment, even if the Chinese are starting to be quite good, adopt a consensus and a common framework and a common ways of assessing things, it creates a global consensus. And yes, it means that there is an opportunity. If we were supporting in Europe and in the UK the companies the right way, we could make sure that we have critical technologies in the future that are applied to drones, that are applied to autonomous systems, and that are also benefiting a lot the economy. Because you see that, I call that the Waymo effect sometimes. Waymo just a few days ago raised $16 billion, which is not the case for Iona, unfortunately.
oh yeah,
And yeah, a bit short of that, but very close. So when you have a Waymo is Google, so it's Alphabet, so it's like backed by Google. Google has Google Wing, which is the drone initiative at Google, and they're doing very well. They're not in my segment. They're not. We're not competitors. They're going for like more ultralight mana type, so like a Deliveroo type. They're not going to stop there, most likely. So it means that like when you think about it, Google has Google Maps, uh, Google Wing, Waymo, and a number of like the layers of the autonomy stack that you would need if you want to verticalize and completely logistics overall, which is, depending on if you're a shareholder or a logistic operator, scary or amazing. Um, and the thing is, we have to be mindful of that. Not that Google shouldn't do that; they should. The problem is not that Google is playing with playing the rules or whatever. No, they should do that, and many others should. So like we should have a competitive landscape of autonomous systems. But by making the rules more complex, we are benefiting the incumbent. We're benefiting the Google who can pour money into that for like 2 years at a loss, bleed 2 billion in funding because they don't care. They have 4 billion in valuation and
Yeah, it relates so closely to some of the things that we're grappling with at the moment. So you have Amazon Freight, you have Uber Freight. The more traditional industries like logistics turn into tech and data solutions, then the more advantage you're giving to those big tier one operators and
yeah.
the technology companies that aren't even operators. And they have a runway that the smaller independents just don't have. So there's a tension there, isn't there, between wanting to move forward into a new world, the future of freight, what does that look like, and engaging with innovation, where at the same time we do want to kind of keep that core structure of our industry intact, which has served us well for 100 years. And yeah, there's a balance between it. It's a really fine line to walk, isn't it?
I think Uber is a good example. Uber is making 11% of its revenue with Uber Freight. So it's massive. And I mean, we can't even say like, oh, it's unfair. It's just like everyone should do that.
Hmm.
The problem is not that Uber is doing it. The problem is that we're not creating an environment and like a competitive landscape in which people can try to go after Uber. And usually when you have that in a country, and I'm not going after Uber because I have enough problems in my life, but
I'll go after
the
you, but
the the reality is usually if you have a small team, let's say you have a small team in the UK of like engineers that want to do like a better product than Uber Freight, or like a better product than any other like of the incumbents out there, they should. It's benefiting like society. Potentially, it's going to benefit the UK also, um, and it's going to definitely benefit the customers. So what we forgot is the ripple effect of that on the chain. If you're Welsh Group and you have like the choice between the incumbent and like 3 or 4 other providers that are jumping on the opportunity to try to build a better product, you will be better off. You will have either a better product, a better pricing, a mix of both, and the efficiencies that you will gain from that are going to have an impact on your profitability, so on your capacity to invest in more vehicles, expand your operations, and so on and so forth. So like inefficiency is not only annoying because like it slows us down or whatever, it has a real tangible impact on wealth, on GDP, on opportunities in a country, and so on and so forth. And the amount of red tape that we accept is slowing down the economy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to grapple with. It begs the question, why delivery drones? So what's your motivation behind all this?
Well, it's kind of cool first.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, no. No, no, well, my favorite book is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, for way harder reasons because it was during the Holocaust and everything. But I truly believe that like we need to find something that has that like it's a purpose basically. A part of my family is in Brittany in west of France. I know the rural areas quite well. I know the inefficiencies in autonomous systems quite well as well from more of my background in strategy. Um, it's something that I actually care about because I think that the impact is not only like an economic impact that can be beneficial for society, the economy, of course, for myself, but like there are other ways to do that. Um, it's meaningful in the sense of I tried, for instance, I changed like recently the way I introduce Iona to investors, because when I speak with a customer, when I speak with someone from the industry, um, they're dealing with day-to-day problems, so they're dealing with what they see every day, which is super important. And I can't just like tell them about the beautiful world that it could be in 20 years and everything. Like, I have problems right now. Can you solve them or not? But when you speak with investors, or when you speak with sometimes like people from the tech world, you're a bit a mix in between, by the way. You can be a bit more. um, forward-looking, let's say. It's an interesting point because what if, let's do a what if scenario. What if you could move light goods around seamlessly for the cost of electricity? Because this is the world that we're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Autonomous systems have a marginal cost that goes towards the marginal cost of electricity. And the reason for that is you have limited labor, you have energy taking like a big part of it. And then the capex, if you sweat an asset 24/7, it doesn't really make like a difference if you pay the asset 30K or 100K. Over the lifetime of the asset, it's going to be quite marginal on the unit cost. So the marginal cost goes towards the marginal cost of energy, which means that we need to produce more energy and we need to produce more clean energy. That's one thing. And we need to use it in a better way. We need to be more energy efficient as well. So if you can send a light drone instead of a bulky delivery van because you only have a few parcels, you should. This what if scenario is interesting because let's now think about how many businesses, how many opportunities there are out there that are not created because logistics is not possible. If you want to send something from the community shop of village number 1 to the community shop of village number 2, most likely you need to go through a courier service that would be very expensive because someone will have to come like to village number 1, spend a lot of time, and so on and so forth. That's quite inefficient. If you want to use a logistics operator to do it, the logistics operators will need to amortize the cost of the fleet, and therefore your village number 1, village number 2 is going to turn into village number 1, London, village number 2, because it's actually, even if it's just a few kilometers away, because it's the way you amortize cost. So if you think about that, what about um, delivering prescriptions directly to people? What about delivering a business like peer-to-peer business, fully decentralized, and you can actually like get your products directly from the farmer, get your products directly from like the producer, and so on and so forth. Um, we live in a world where Starlink connected everyone everywhere. The office that we have is not very far from yours in Connington. We have Starlink there. Like it's a farm. It's literally a farm, and we have 300 megabytes internet there, and it's perfect. Slack and Zoom and Riverside that we're using at the moment, or plenty of tools like that, made possible the fact like we gave us the opportunity to work from anywhere and to decentralize the way we work. But we can't get a light bulb in less than 2 hours if you don't live in the middle of London, Manchester, or like big cities like that. That's a bit of a paradox. Like the next frontier is actually the physical frontier of moving things around. And this is what Waymo is doing with people. Think about the impact on the real estate. Like if you can actually get driven by your autonomous car to work in the morning and in the evening, you can work in your car, you change the real estate. Maybe you're going to live further away because you want to have kids and like have a backyard and so on and so forth. Um, Same thing with drones. And so we changed the way we live. And it's a funny thing in history because rural areas were like the place where wealth was created 100 years ago. When you were in London or in a big city in general, it was because you had to. It was the Industrial Revolution. It was like those were not necessarily super interesting jobs and where the wealth was created. What 100 years ago, the economy 100 years ago was extremely based on agriculture. So, like having land in the middle of nowhere in Scotland was much more valuable than having a studio in London. It changed slightly, and this world could be a cycle. If I can live in the middle of Scotland and get an amazing quality of life and all the opportunities that I have in London, why would I live in London?
Yeah, no, exactly. There's the utilization piece is really interesting when you talk about cars and the move to autonomous cars and what that looks like. Someone told me that the average car has like 3% utilization. Um, in commercial vehicles, you know, that would bankrupt you. Yeah, you can't have a commercial
Yeah,
vehicle with 3% utilization. But actually, a lot of our vehicles today aren't fully utilized in the way, you know, 30% of trucks miles are empty. So
yeah,
once you can start giving like a system level view over what is currently a very sort of fragmented system, then the efficiencies you can drive in that are absolutely astronomical. And we're at the point now where technology is probably enabling that for the first time. I guess
yeah.
the challenges then come down to sort of data and getting that out of operators and what that looks like. Is that something you're encountering? So, you know, you could have the best system in the world for optimizing stuff, but if you don't have the core data to work from, then you're not going to get the results that you need.
Yes, data is so data accuracy is one thing, and then I think a lot of players in the market are still operating with a system that, in my opinion, is outdated, which is secluding data and trying to create switching costs for the
Yeah,
customers. When, to be honest, like it works maybe for a time, you're going to make that more difficult for the people to make the switch. But if a TMS is trying to play on switching costs in the in the age of I don't think that TMS is going in the right direction, because at some point a company like Welsh or like any others will want to get the database, because this is the core of the business. This is like the blood of the business.
that's where the value is. Yeah.
And yeah, and this is the job, I think, for the logistics operators in the future. When you think about like the change, and it's an interesting thing about like jobs, for instance, like many people fear about like, is robotics and automation are going to replace jobs. The main problem that we have at the moment is we're using people where they're not the most valuable. um, if you need, and I know that we talked about that example for one of the deliveries that you had to do, and someone from your team has to like get on a car and deliver one parcel like to this remote place because there is nothing else going there and everything. That person, it's not the most interesting part of the job, most likely, and that person could actually orchestrate uh, automations and streams of logistics. So you need exactly the same amount of people, most likely way like much more actually, but they will operate 10 times the logistic streams that you're operating right now. And when you have like that mindset of, okay, we this is the future that we're going towards, you know that the data is what enables you to do what a logistics operator is about, which is supply and demand and orchestration of streams. So this is like the most important for a logistics operators. And when you have that, you need to have your data on which you will plug systems. It can be a robotic system, it can be an automatic conveyor belt that you need for your warehouse. It can be a number of solutions that will enable you to do that job better. And the thing is, if one of the players in that tool chain that you have is not playing by your rules in terms of just getting you the data and access to data with an MCP or an API, or just because it plugs itself on your database, you will end up with an inefficiency that might be in the short term be something that you accept, but in the long term you will just change provider. And I think this is some of the limitations that we see in the market, is that by fear of losing their customers, um, they're creating frustration,
Hmm.
and that's not necessarily the right way. The other problem that we have on top of like the security and like the access to data, which is not the main one. The main one is the accuracy of the data, because data didn't need to be accurate or that accurate before. You don't want to like get the wrong address. But if your parcel is 10 kilos instead of 8, doesn't really make a difference. We need to get to a much more granular level of data. And I know that you have some projects on that, and I don't know if you want to talk about the forklift and things like that, but we need to have an accurate database, and we need to work on the data on the database.
Yeah, I guess one of the shifts we've made in recent years is we went from looking at all the shiny new toys, of which Iona is one of them, yeah, admittedly, like this kind of end state, to, well, actually, where's this data coming from? How are we collecting it? Are we confident that it's correct? And do we have good access to it? And you're right, the vendors that try and protect that data, that try and keep the value of that data to themselves, because I think that's what they're doing more than just trying to lock people in. Like there's value in that data, and they want to keep the value. Is how do operators take that back? And we talk about data sovereignty in the same way that we talk about energy sovereignty. Yeah. And it feeds very into that idea of independent family owned operators, how we've always operated, but just moving that same philosophy into this new world of tech and data. Yeah, no, really
Mm.
interesting stuff.
And that data also is like, let's say maybe we can emphasize the point here. On top of like your efficiency right away, if you don't own your data, you're not going to be able to compete as Welsh Group or as a logistics operator in the future, because you will not have access to the same tools. One thing that I do in my company at the moment is that we verticalize the database on a number of tools, not because we want to be in control of everything and we are a control freak. I'm slightly a control freak, but that's another problem. We really want to have the efficiency of we can plug any application layer, we can be as competitive as we should, because we're not locked in with any player that would leverage its position in a certain way. And so you have to be competitive, and you like it's a matter of like having a business long term.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. So we've got past those points. We've got the data. The policy's good. You going to sell me a drone? Is that how it works?
Well, if you want to play
You
with
want-
one, I could try, but it's a bit big. I don't know how your backyard is, but so no, we're not selling the drones, mostly because we can't
Yeah,
really sell a drone.
that makes sense.
For a number of reasons. They're quite big toys, let's say, and what we bring as a value is not just the hardware. It's actually just the platform. The hardware is a requirement, of course, um, but what we bring is a service. So we're bringing like an autonomous system that connects live with the aviation authority and with everything that needs to be controlled. We're selling also like the maintenance app, the technician app, so that anyone can actually supervise and maintain the drone on site, know what it did before, what it's going to do next, when the battery has to be changed, and so on and so forth. And we're also supervising the aviation compliance that goes with it. So um, we are liable basically if something happens. So we can't really just like let a drone somewhere because we don't know how it's going to be maintained, how it's going to be operated, and so on. So what we do is we're using a very similar 3PL system, but for drones. So let's negotiate every year on a type of infrastructure that you need. How many drones would you need at that depot, for instance, based on the forecasted demand and what you expect it to be? And then based on this and based on the forecasted number of deliveries that you need to do as a drone, we have a costing capacity that will say, okay, if you want to deliver 10,000 parcels, we estimate that it's going to be about that much in terms of infrastructure and like fixed cost, and we're going to give you an implementation fee based on the number of assets that you need, the number of drones especially. And then we're going to negotiate a price per delivery or a price per flight, because this is when actually like the drone needs maintenance and cost. So as long as you don't fly, we don't need to replace the components. But like when you, the more you fly, the more maintenance has to be done. And it's similar to when you think about it, it's similar to a 3PL system, because it's a bit like having a leasing on a vehicle and then paying 300-400 pounds per day to cover the delivery van, and the different costs associated with the shift that you will do, and so on and so forth. So similar system, and even if you go like to the last mile delivery providers, they usually charge per parcel. So in that case, you will charge most likely a fixed price to a certain person, like a certain customer, to deliver from there to there. So it's pretty similar.
I'm going to say it, drone as a service. Yeah.
Yeah, so we prefer network as a service.
Network as a service. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
because the real efficiency comes from there. You have a depot somewhere, you have another depot somewhere. We can not only fly radius range around the depot anywhere and deliver to anywhere, but you also create a network effect. You go depot one, depot two, and then you can actually change the way you optimize your shift. So let's take the example of the multimodal. You want to amortize this massive truck that goes from Cambridge to Edinburgh. The best way to do that is to get as many parcels and as many pallets as possible in this. We can actually help you with that too. Maybe you have something in a remote location. We're going to fly it to depot number one. We're going to get more parcels from depot number one. We're going to fly to depot number two. And from depot number two, your truck is going to go to Edinburgh. And in that case, not only we're doing multimodal, but we are like the delivery shift that you're doing with the truck is cheaper in a way, or at least it's more profitable. And on top of that, you have been able to do reverse logistics. You have been able to do depot to depot, mid mile, last mile, any type of uh, delivery offer that you need. So what we see is a change in the industry, because we're not delivering containers anymore. Like the probably 20, 30 years ago, um, I would expect Welsh to get data on this actually, but like you probably didn't have that many e-commerce parcels, 2-3 kilos max, but thousands per year.
Hmm.
And so the way we consume and use deliveries has drastically changed. And we want to adapt to this, because when you deal with e-commerce, you need to deal with reverse logistics, you need to deal with same day, next day deliveries. Most likely in the future, you will have like the expectation to be delivered in less than 2 hours. So how, as a logistic operator, can you compete with that? You need to adapt like your technology and your assets.
My boss's dad often says the industry was at its most efficient about 30 years ago because someone would deliver a truck full of goods and it would get there sometime next week. Yeah. And the Amazon effect, this idea that I want it at 11:45 on Tuesday, and if you're 5 minutes late, there's a fine. It just destroys any kind of flexibility you have to make things more efficient. And the world that we're heading into now is kind of pushing back on that a little bit and saying, well, if we're smarter, if we collaborate more and if we use different modes, then maybe we can start to pull back on that efficiency.
Yeah, it's actually it's coming back to the conversation earlier on incumbents.
Hmm.
We If we try to stop innovation, some others will do it, like Amazon, and it's gonna increase like and drastically uh, make the situation worse in terms of the gap that there is, and at some point it's gonna break. So we need to promote innovation, but we need to promote innovation for everyone and not just for the big ones, the big players and everything. So this is definitely what we're trying to do. And we say, luckily, in a few years, we could be the alternative to an Amazon or a Google if they continue to vertically integrate their stack and get to like the type of cargo that we do, which I think at some point they will want to. This is the way we see like the industry evolving.
Yeah, no, me too. Me too. So are those the sort of timelines you can see this working to? Like a couple of years, then and operate any other operator will be able to engage with this and put something in place. So I guess if you're an operator listening to this and it resonates, how far
Yes.
away? What should they be looking out for before they can make this real?
It can be fairly quick. The main problem is investment, and the bottleneck is ops. So at the moment, we have a production capacity, and I take the example of my company, but to be honest, like the overall industry in many other segments is quite mature already. When a zipline raised 600 million recently, it's because the market is quite mature. Like the market is there. The bottleneck is ops and implementation. So it's a change in paradigm that is quite significant. We as a especially as a startup, we can't sell a technology to someone, especially a logistic operator, without an immediate return on investment. They don't have like billions or millions to burn in R&D. So it slows down the process. And the way to do that is to go through like the VC route and to explain to external investors that once the opportunity and once the technology is mature, it's going to be worth it. And to engage with the logistics operators right away and to say like, let's operate from the start, like from day one, as if it was mature. Let's work together over a year. We're going to show you how we do it. We're going to train your capacity. We're going to work on the data aspect that we discussed just a few minutes ago. And we're going to make sure that like everything works. And what it gives us the time to do is also like to make the operation compliant with the aviation authority. Of course, when you're a big player, you don't need that because you don't need like a logistic operator to come play with you. You just like vertically integrate everything. So I think that's the main blocking point and also the main risk. So the startups like Iona and the logistics operators like Welsh, what we're doing is important because we are actually making that possible. And then like in terms of technical feasibility, so the product is going to be refined and a number of iterations will happen, but it's already capable. It's already regulated and certified as it should. So we can fly autonomously, and we can mention that, but we're going to release very soon the demo that we did with Welch in November last year, demonstrating the different phases of flight and the capacity of the technology. The next step is um, operating a pilot somewhere and building up on it. So theoretically, if resource were not like limited, we could be up and running in 6 months. What I need to do first is scale my ops team so that we can work with the aviation authority, get the approvals the right way, and so on. So what we're doing at the moment is really encapsulating the complexity to make that simple to the logistics operators. And we hope that this work is going to be finalized in the next 6 months. So we already operate a few pilots. We already operate a few tests in the UK and in the EU. I think it's going to become more mainstream in 2027, and you will see Iona, but other drones and other segments of drone delivery also like literally taking off day to day. And I think that by 2028, I wouldn't be surprised if the world has changed quite a lot, and that actually we see day to day operations, not necessarily in the big cities again, because it's not like the low-hanging fruit basically, but for very specific use cases around medical, around remote deliveries, around express deliveries. I wouldn't be like surprised to see day-to-day drones flying around exactly the way you see planes, basically. Like it's not a sky dystopian like sky full of drones and everything. It's just like from time to time you're driving between two like villages in a rural England, and you see a drone passing by, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a drone.
I'm excited for that day.
If you're coming close to our office, you can actually see that quite often already.
Awesome, awesome. Before we close out, anything we haven't covered that you particularly want to talk about? Or any closing thoughts?
I think we have started to wake up in Europe and in the UK. We have started to realize that we can't optimize everything with software. Software is great, but it's meant to optimize something tangible. So we need the tangible, and we need to get probably back to the basics. What matters? What matters is getting food, getting stuff transported there or there because it matters for the economy and society. Um, Things that are probably lower on the Maslow pyramid, but very important day to day. And we need more investment and we need more interest. So I'm a geek. I'm into innovation and like new technologies for quite some time. I'm passionate about that, but I think we have to be mindful as a society, not to care too much, not to pay too much attention to the shiny things out there, but actually, in what way does it impact the real world? And AI is a good example. We're using AI. We were calling that reinforcement learning and machine learning before. We're using AI in our tools. We're using AI everywhere. AI is going to be optimizing what we have, but let's make sure that we have something in the first place to optimize. Because if our industries, or if our SMEs, if the economics of like any European country at the moment is becoming just a finance or just a SaaS to sell services to people, we will have a problem. We will have a problem of sovereignty. We will have a problem of with the economy, and we will have a number of problems along the way when we realize too late that the value is actually in what is tangible.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Thanks.